Everyone told you it was too late. Your wife said it first, then your friends, then maybe a doctor who mentioned bone density, or a coworker who knew someone who knew someone. The warnings came wrapped in logic, in love, in statistics about reaction times and healing rates, and you bought the bike anyway. That decision says more about where you are psychologically than almost anything else you've done in the last decade. And most people around you, maybe even you, have never fully understood why. This isn't about a midlife crisis. It isn't about chasing youth. And it definitely isn't about not caring what happens to you. This is about something far more specific, far more honest, and far more psychologically interesting than any of those explanations give you credit for. Here's what nobody talks about when men hit their 40s. You've spent 20 years becoming competent at your job, at being a husband or a father or a provider, at handling things, at being the person other people hand their problems to. And somewhere inside all that competence, something went quiet. Not broken, not depressed, just quiet. Like a part of you that used to ask questions stopped asking. Like the version of you that used to want things started deferring instead. Psychologists have a name for this specific kind of internal erosion. They call it identity foreclosure, the gradual narrowing of who you are down to only the roles other people need you to fill. It doesn't feel dramatic. That's what makes it dangerous. It just feels like being responsible, like being mature, like being fine. Men who start writing after 40 don't score unusually high on recklessness scales. That's not what the research shows. What they score high on is agency orientation, the psychological need to be the direct cause of your own experience, to have your choices produce immediate, physical, undeniable results. Most of adult life works against that. You make a decision at work and see the outcome in 6 months. You invest in your health and feel it in 6 years. Everything meaningful runs on a delay. A motorcycle has no delay. You lean and it responds. You brake and it stops. You open the throttle and the consequence is immediate and total and yours. For men whose agency has been distributed across spreadsheets and other people's needs for 20 years, that immediacy isn't a thrill. It's oxygen. On a motorcycle, you cannot be anywhere but here, not mentally drafting an email, not replaying a conversation from Tuesday, not managing anyone's expectations. The road takes everything, your vision, your hands, your posture, your instincts, every single second. Psychologists call this state of complete cognitive absorption flow, and research consistently shows that flow states are among the most restorative experiences available to the human brain. Not relaxing, restorative. There's a difference. Relaxing is passive, restorative rebuilds something. Men in their 40s are often dramatically starved of flow. Their work no longer challenges them the way it once did. Their home life runs on routine. The brain starts to coast. Writing doesn't let the brain coast. And for men who haven't felt fully awake inside a single hour of their week, that demand is not a burden, it's a relief. There's a man named Kevin, 44 years old, from Columbus, Ohio. He spent 16 years in operations management. Good at it, well paid for it, completely invisible inside it. He got his license at 43 after what he describes as a Tuesday afternoon where he sat in his car in the parking garage for 20 minutes and couldn't remember what he was supposed to feel motivated about. He didn't tell his wife for 3 weeks that he'd enrolled in the course. The first time he rode alone, really alone, no instructor, no traffic, just a county road outside the city, he said something happened that he still can't fully explain. He didn't feel young again, that's not what it was. He felt present, like his body and his mind were finally in the same room after years of one of them being somewhere else. Kevin rides every Saturday morning before his family is awake. He says it's the only hour of the week that belongs completely to him, not to a role, not to a responsibility, just to him. That experience has a name in psychology: psychological ownership, the sense that something, a time, a space, an experience, is genuinely, unconditionally yours. Research on psychological ownership shows it's a fundamental human need, not a luxury, not selfishness. Men in their 40s are often profoundly ownership-starved. Their time is allocated, their energy is spoken for, even their hobbies have quietly become things they do for other people. Writing, for many of them, is the first thing in years that belongs to no one else, that cannot be repurposed or scheduled over or turned into something useful. That irreducibility is not a small thing. It's the whole thing. Think about what it actually takes to ride well. The friction zone on the clutch, the precise weight shift going into a corner, the way you have to look through a curve, not at it, the decision architecture running constantly in the background, speed, surface, sight lines, spacing. None of this comes automatically. It is earned, slowly, deliberately, through repetition and small failures and corrections. Psychologists who study adult development describe something called late-stage mastery seeking, the deep need, particularly strong in men past 40, to build real competence in something that has no shortcut, something that cannot be delegated or automated or bullshitted. Experienced writers describe the same thing. At some point, you stop thinking about writing. You ride. And in that transition, from conscious effort to embodied fluency, something fundamental shifts. You become someone who can do a difficult thing. Not used to be able to, not almost, can. For men who have spent years being good at things that no longer feel hard, that feeling is not small. It is, for many of them, the most meaningful competence they've built in years. But let's be honest about something. Not every man who picks up riding at 42 is in a healthy relationship with why. Some men ride because it's the only available exit from a life that feels like a trap. The speed becomes sedation. The risk becomes the point. The bike becomes the thing they hide inside instead of the thing they grow inside. Psychologists call this experiential avoidance, using intense sensation to outrun internal states you haven't been willing to sit with. The difference between riding as reclamation and riding as escape is not always obvious from the outside, but you usually know. The healthy version makes you want to go back to your life. The other version makes the idea of going back unbearable. If it's the second one, the bike isn't the problem. But it isn't the solution either. There's a man named Richard, 48 years old, from Portland. He started writing 8 months after his youngest left for college. 22 years of his identity built around being a father, present in the house. And then the house was quiet, and the role that had organized everything was just gone. His first ride was 60 miles. He pulled over twice. Not because anything went wrong mechanically, but because he needed a minute to understand what he was feeling. He said it was the first time in 2 decades he had made a decision with no one else's welfare factored into the calculation. Just, I want to go this way, so I will go this way. Richard says motorcycles didn't replace what he lost when his kids grew up. Nothing replaces that. But they gave him access to a version of himself that predated every role he'd ever taken on, a self that still knew what it wanted. He says that version of himself had been very patient. That experience connects directly to what psychologists call self-continuity, the sense of a thread running through all the versions of who you've been. Men in their 40s often experience what researchers describe as role exit crisis, not because their life is bad, but because the structures that told them who they were have changed or ended. The career plateaus, the kids leave, the thing you were building is built, and suddenly the question that got deferred for 20 years is sitting across the table again. Who are you when no one needs anything from you? Writing doesn't answer that question, but it creates the conditions where a man can start to hear himself think again, where the noise of performance and obligation drops away long enough for something real to surface. And then there are the warnings, the ones about age, about reaction time, about having too much to lose now. Those warnings aren't wrong about the risk. Motorcycles are dangerous. That's just true. The people who issue the warnings love you, and they aren't wrong. But what they're measuring is the cost of riding. They're not measuring the cost of not riding, the cost of another decade of coasting, of being competent and present and completely unexpressed, of being fine in a way that slowly hollows you out. You didn't buy that bike because you stopped caring about your life. You bought it because you started caring again. Every time you gear up before sunrise, every time you feel that engine settle into its idle, you're not running from something. You're not pretending it's 1994. You're choosing, deliberately and at some cost, to remain a full person. Not a reckless one, not a selfish one, a conscious one. Drop a comment below. What finally made you decide to get on a bike after everything telling you not to? Tell us the story. We actually want to know. If this video made you feel seen, subscribe,